there is definitely two different kinds of narratives growing on the ongoing tax action against the BBC in this country. R.S. Pathania, BJP spokesperson, is with me on the show, as is Karan Verma, author. Subir Bhaumik, veteran BBC journalist, joining us today, as is Prem Shankar Jha, member of the Editors Guild. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Subir Bhaumik, I will begin with you and ask you how people who have worked with the BBC, are connected with the BBC, are looking at this action today.
Well, to be fair, I will actually uphold the BBC's tradition and not appear here as some kind of person who is holding brief for the BBC, right? We have had issues, serious issues, working for BBC in India, and I can only tell you that after working 17 years for BBC, I don't get a pension from them, whereas Mr. John or Jim, who has worked 3 years in London, get a pension, right? So there have been extreme cases of unfairness, and therefore I have no reason to, hold brief for the BBC here. But let me tell you something. Couple of things on, the issues that come from what Kanchan was saying. A, BBC has often had huge trouble with the UK government, beginning with the Falklands War, when BBC decided to send a team to cover the war, not only from the British side, but another team from the Argentine side. So, would you imagine an Indian sort of television channel sending somebody to cover the war from the Pakistan army side? I mean, so you understand what I'm trying to say. And Margaret Thatcher was black and blue with that kind of thing, sort of took us to task. But John Tusa was then the managing director of the BBC, went on record saying, "Madam, you run the country, we run the radio station." Those days BBC was largely radio, and we know our job. I will also draw your attention to the huge problem that BBC had over this weapons of mass destruction issue with the Tony Blair government, which cost us a lot of money.
May I, Mr. Bhaumik, may I bring it to current day? Because, frankly, today we're not sitting in judgment of the BBC's reputation, whether they're good organization, bad organization, free, not free, what their relationship has been with the UK government. In our context today, the question is that what is the interpretation of the taxman's action on BBC offices in India? Is it a separate action, a simple raid, as Mr. Kanchan Gupta has said vociferously right now in his conversation and gone? He's saying it's nothing to do with the documentary. If he wanted to do something, we would have done it long ago. Or is it a clear message that is being given? May I ask you your view on that specifically, Mr. Bhaumik?
Well, you need actually some context, because he was talking about, BBC's editorial style and all that. But let me come to the current issue. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if BBC has been operating in India for a very long time, and if the income tax department is waking up today to conduct a survey, it says a lot about the income tax department, because they should be surveying all potential commercial or otherwise organizations. BBC is a public service broadcaster, but they are commercial in the sense that their television does actually take advertisements and make money. So what I'm trying to say is, BBC has been around for a long time. They created this BBC India private limited subsidiary of the BBC in London here in 2004, when our contracts changed from pound sterling earning employees, we became rupee earning employees. But the point I'm trying to make here is that a survey of this kind happening 18 years after BBC private BBC private India speaks a lot about why the income tax department has suddenly woken up to it. And the reason is...
Why have they suddenly woken up? Okay,
Pardon?
Let me get some responses. Why have they suddenly woken up today? Karan Verma, why don't you go first? Why have they suddenly woken up today? It has been about 30 days, a little short actually, since the BBC documentary.
Well,
if just let me complete the point. If there has been violation in the past and the BBC has been hauled up for tax evasion or non-compliance in the past, what was the need of a survey, and why does it need to continue for 30 plus hours?
Look, let me just put this in perspective. BBC is being alleged, it's being alleged that BBC has violated the transfer pricing norm as per Section 92F of the Income Tax Act. Now, as per this act, a notice is sent under Section 142(1). Now, this notice was sent a couple of months before. The rule is that if you do not reply to three successive notices, which you are bound to reply, or it's been 2 months since you've been issued a notice, the jurisdictional tax officer, the local jurisdictional tax officer, is bound to hold a survey, which is precisely what's happening under Section 132. I don't understand where a single norm has been violated in this due process of law. Now, the BBC documentary that came, it came 3 to 4 weeks back. But the fact that BBC has not replied to any of the notices is something that's out there in the public domain, and that's been going on for months together.
No, but Karan Verma, there's no statement from the Income Tax Department.
This is not
I have not seen any official statement. Everything is sources from some mysterious sources. I have not seen an official statement from the Income Tax Department saying that our notices have not been responded to. There is no official statement from the BBC saying we have not responded to Income Tax Departments in the past.
Official.
Where have they said this officially? That the BBC has... where has the Income Tax Department come and said...
to any of the notices?
No. But from where are we basing this? What I'm saying is that if there is a serious... If there is, everything is, I know I'm standing in a newsroom, Karan, everything is government sources, some sources trying to feed some information. My point is, if there are such serious non-compliances with transfer pricing, by the way, the history of transfer pricing in India is a whole separate discussion. The government of that day took Vodafone to court and lost for transfer pricing. Several MNCs have been taken to court. It has gone to court and it has gone one way or the other. So transfer pricing is very complex. Transfer pricing is very complex. My point is, if there is such a huge violation, come out with a press conference, tell everyone this is what the BBC did not do, and explain why you need to stand in a newsroom for 30 plus hours to find out what. Isn't everything digital?
I think after the survey, they will come up with it.
Okay.
Tamanna, they will come up with a press conference after the survey. Nobody comes up with a press conference before the survey. And a survey can happen only if you do not reply to the notices. Otherwise, a survey like this can't happen. If they would have duly replied to the notices under Section 133, they would have not done a survey. So the truth is, for transfer pricing, an audit is generally done. But here, because they've not replied to the notices, and this is very much in the public domain, you're talking about sources, I think it's confirmed sources within the Income Tax Department that they've not replied to the notices. And the BBC has a checkered past of that. They are facing tax evasion, multi-million-dollar tax evasion cases in various countries, especially the UK itself. So I don't know why we have to ascribe a motive to everything if things are happening as per law. Let the survey complete.
Okay. Prem Shankar Jha, I've seen the editors
they will.
Guild
After the survey,
respond.
They will.
1 minute.
Let's wait for
Mr.
that
Prem Shankar Jha, why is everything being ascribed to this action? Why is it being ascribed? Why is the Editors Guild saying that this is coercion when it could possibly be just a process that is being followed?
Look, I've been a journalist all my life. 60 years. And this is to tell me that there is no relationship between a particularly damaging documentary which directly pins some of the blame, at least, for the Holocaust in Ahmedabad in 2002 on Prime Minister Modi, and an income tax raid that follows within 2 or 3 weeks of it. Only, I don't know who, 500 repetitions will not destroy a human being's common sense. I just leave it to the common sense of any ordinary person in India to decide whether the two are connected or not. It is immaterial whether there is any substance, in any reason to believe that BBC has been finagling funds. First and foremost, I find this extremely difficult to believe for the following reasons. One, BBC does not sell news in any sense of the term. In the sense, it does not try to get advertisement in India in order to be able to pay for the purveying of news in India. There is the second thing is the funding of the BBC comes almost entirely from the British government, and the BBC runs at a loss. Which is so this to say that if you have to make money in order to be able to hide it or to do funny things with it. If you're not making money in a country, if you're not getting ad revenues, then what precisely are you doing? So first there's the question of timing. Secondly, there's the question of this is not a commercial organization. The third the point that I think we should take into account is that I don't even know where to start. It's so absurd. The arguments being put forward. The BBC has done this. The BBC has done that. It's right. So many countries that it has been charged. Can any of these people cite one case anywhere where the BBC has been actually indicted and convicted by a court of law of having, hidden money or transferred money or laundered money, which is the favorite term these days of the Modi government? If you can point out a concrete case, yes.
So, Mr. Jha, are you saying in the UK cases which are cited? Are you saying in the UK cases?
Hold on. Give me please. Let me finish my sentence. How is it that these wild accusations are made and there's not one iota of proof being given by any of these gentlemen? And finally, they're talking about this big thing in Delhi when the government pounced on BBC in London. The fact is, it had nothing to do with money. It had to do with a report by a reporter called Andrew Gilligan on the misrepresentation of news about Saddam Hussein's nuclear weapons of destruction that he was producing, and that was revealed by a British scientist who later committed suicide, and the reporter Andrew Gilligan was in fact driven out of BBC. But two people, both the director of BBC and the director of news, resigned over this issue. It was a huge issue. It's the only issue I can think of where there was a conflict between BBC and the British government. So I do not know where Kanchan Gupta is getting these remarks from. But what I'm struck by everything that I've heard is that there's not one single particular piece of evidence anywhere. And there is no answer to the timing. Remember that the BBC is, the news of the BBC was what the BJP students' wings and all that during the emergency relied upon entirely to attack Mrs. Gandhi's government.
May I get a response,
Mr. Jha? Now that same BBC has become the villain of the piece just now. Thank you very much.
Mr. Pathania,
thank you for giving me so much time.
Mr. R.S. Pathania, you've listened to all of the comments. I wanted to come to you after you've listened to all of the comments, and we have got a pretty diverse point of view on the show today. We've tried and gotten every perspective. The two questions that Mr. Prem Shankar Jha talked about, that there is no clarity on the timing even now. The close proximity between the documentary and this action. And how can you say that there is no connection? Secondly, is there any evidence, he is saying, to the claims being made that the BBC has been a regular tax offender in India? Let me keep aside the UK for just a minute. But right now, these are all claims that are coming to the fore.
Or
yes,
any
Mr.
other country.
Tamanna, first part of the argument that prima facie, at least we should believe the system, believe the government, and believe the agencies. This disbelieving and casting aspersions on the integrity of institutions, the departments and processes, with due respect, I don't at least approve of it. Prem Shankar Jha is a very senior journalist, and I don't wish to join issues with him. So prima facie, BBC is guilty of transfer pricing norms, throwing to with the transfer pricing norms and tax evasion at a large scale. And we have held a categorical stand on your channel also that IT inspections at the BBC operation, that is one part. And BBC documentary being not allowed to be played on OTT platforms in India, that's the secondary issue. And as Mr. Jha was pointing out, common sense. Let me point out that common sense. There was a big furor, a big wolf cry, Godhra, Godhra, Godhra. A leader of which political party she used the word Nafrat ke Saudagar. And another leader of a political party used the
पठानिया, ये
epithet.
हमारे डिस्कशन से क्या कनेक्शन है सर?
I'm
आज
coming to
क्या
that.
कनेक्शन है? मतलब, you know, I'll tell you, my only concern is we've talked about everything in the whole world. UK, tax, presenters, everything, transfer pricing. Ji, sir.
I'm using the word common sense. That right from 2002 till 2020, the entire country is hearing Godhra. He was given a clean chit by Supreme Court, and only thereafter a documentary from BBC comes in and out the stands in India as well as outside India. So, is this not common sense that BBC commentary is it is politically motivated? It has been.
But
it
you
has
are
been engineered.
proving the point of the people who are saying this is a
Can I
revenge
say something
action.
on this?
Because when I'm asking you about tax rates, tax survey, you're
No,
talking
may I
about
say something
documentary. तो
also?
आप लोगों का point prove कर रहे हैं, sir.
I'm just trying to deal with the argument of Mr. Prem Shankar Jha sir, that BBC is not an holy cow. BBC is as good as any other media company in India, which has all the rights, all the privileges, and all the benefits which are available to any media company, including BBC, in the territory of India. And to put it the other way, also all limitations, all restrictions, all legal impediments, which are to which other media houses are subject to. BBC is
No,
also
taxes
subject
have to be paid by everyone, media or not. Prem Shankar Jha wants to respond. Yes, sir. Quick response, please. Quick response, please, Mr. Jha.
Yeah,
Please.
well, I'm sorry to say there was something Mr. Pathania said which was absurd, and I wanted to respond then, but I didn't have the time, and now I have forgotten it. So I beg to be excused for doing that. I just cannot remember what it was that I wanted to say.
Okay. Obviously, it wasn't something that irked you enough. Otherwise, you would have definitely
Sorry about that.
remembered it. No problem, Mr. Jha.
Well,
But
well, you know, no,
Doesn't remember.
you know, the point about
Okay.
timing. Oh yes, I remember. Can I just say one thing?
Yes,
there is an
yes, Mr.
important
Jha.
point about timing which you must listen to, and I think everyone has a right to listen
make
to
a
it,
point.
including Mr. Pathania and and Kanchan, which is why did the BBC do this film now? The answer is that they came into possession of a confidential report by the British government to the British Prime Minister on the Ahmedabad riots only very recently. The real question we should ask is who released that report to the BJP now? Has to be somebody in the British government, and why? Okay, that's the second. That's not the issue we're discussing. But I do want to point it out that a news organization which has a sensational report by its own government and is confidential, on the basis of which, mind you, a similar report must have gone to the US. Otherwise, they wouldn't have banned Mr. Modi from visas until he became Prime Minister all this time. Now, so there is some report there which is quite damaging. The other thing was that they then followed this up with an interview. They came across an interview by the then British Foreign Minister in 2002,
Okay.
Jack Straw.
But yet
The two
again,
things
yet
together
again,
made a
we
very
need to talk
damning
about.
thing. That is why they did it. I can understand.
We need
Now,
to prove. We need to
one
prove that
more thing.
claim.
Don't we
need to prove that
revisit
claim. We
problems
need to
of the
prove
past?
that link.
Have we not revisited?
Okay, I have to wrap it here.
No,
Because I'm absolutely out of
that
time.
is in the Guardian. Then I choose to trust the Guardian. Kindly go and read the Guardian.
That's everyone's choice to trust whoever they want to. Okay, Mr. Pathania, very quick response, but 10 seconds, please. I'm terribly over.
I don't want to question the credibility and the reputation of the BBC, but a very interesting and an amusing person, Mr. Durgesh Pathak, and leading a Twitter series on the gems of BBC, the Sanatani way of being, what the wife of Surya Kumar Yadav does when he performs well in a match, how do we deal with
अब हम
dirty
थोड़ा
underwears
ऑफ ट्रैक
also?
जा रहे हैं पठानिया जी लास्ट मैंने आपको 10 सेकंड दिया आप थोड़ा ऑफ ट्रैक चले गए हैं
See,
whoever doesn't want to read the BBC doesn't have to. I am not standing here to say please go to some other news organization. I would rather use the time saying please come to my news organization. This is not what's happening here. We're questioning very simply whether tax action for 30 plus hours on a media organization is just what it seems or is there a bigger story to it. It's a question that we're asking because it's our job too. I'm going to take a break here. I want to thank all of you for your time on this topic.